It was just another ordinary day on Earth, or so everyone thought. On the surface, the bustling cities, the advanced technologies, and the vibrant life were all the same. But somewhere, 1,000 light-years away, the galaxy's most feared predators, the Vornax Apex, had just begun their silent journey toward Earth. The Vornax Apex were no ordinary alien species. Towering, deadly, and merciless, they were apex predators, not just by nature, but by evolution itself. For centuries, they had dominated entire star systems, wiping out species that dared to challenge their power. Their invasion of Earth wasn't just a conquest for resources, it was a declaration of total destruction. They had done it before, and now, Earth would be their next victim. As the Vornax Apex fleet approached, the first signs of trouble began to show on Earth's radar systems. Satellites in orbit began to pick up strange signals, disturbances in the atmosphere that made no sense. To Earth's defense teams, it was the first indication that something was wrong, but they couldn't understand the scale of the threat yet. The signals were unlike anything they had ever encountered, too advanced, too complex. Before they could make sense of it, an unprecedented event occurred. EMP bursts, powerful and precise, began to blanket Earth's communication networks. All systems went dark. The usual hum of life turned into an eerie silence. The once dependable satellites began to flicker and die, one by one. Cities were plunged into chaos as technology, everything from power grids to transportation, collapsed. Within hours, Earth's military was scrambling to restore control. Every scientist, every analyst, tried to find the source of these attacks, but it was too late. The first wave of Vornax Apex ships had entered Earth's atmosphere. From space, they looked like dark, menacing shadows moving at the speed of light. Their massive fleets blotted out the sun, casting Earth into an unnatural twilight. Humans had never seen anything like it. Massive battleships, covered in sharp, deadly alloys, hovered ominously over Earth's major cities. These ships weren't just war machines, they were monuments of destruction. The Vornax Apex had come to show their power, to demonstrate that nothing could stand in their way. This was their moment, and they would waste no time in taking what was rightfully theirs. But what they hadn't anticipated, what they hadn't even considered, was that the humans they were about to crush were not the weaklings they expected. Earth had always been a planet of survival, a world where life had fought against the odds, and humanity had learned from its past. It wasn't a question of technology or might, it was about will. As the Vornax Apex ships landed on Earth's surface, they were ready for an easy victory. They were used to conquering planets without resistance, wiping out any species that stood in their way. But this time, something was different. The moment they landed, the Earth responded. Human military forces, once disorganized and underprepared, quickly rallied together. Across the world, soldiers, scientists, and engineers began to form a united front. They had no choice. This wasn't a war of choice, it was a fight for survival. The invasion was swift, and Earth's population was thrown into chaos, but the human spirit had awakened. On the front lines, Colonel Lynx stood with his elite team, watching the destruction unfold. The sky above was filled with the roar of Vornax Apex ships, and the ground trembled under the weight of their landing. His team, a group of highly trained soldiers, was tasked with holding back the first wave. But even they knew that their chances of victory were slim. The Vornax Apex were unlike any enemies they had faced before. They were faster, stronger, and their technology was centuries ahead of anything humanity had developed. As the Vornax Apex descended, their massive footfalls shaking the ground, Lynx's team moved into position. They were prepared, but the sense of dread in the air was undeniable. They had always trained for the impossible, but this was different. The sheer scale of the Vornax Apex forces was overwhelming. Just as the first wave of Vornax Apex soldiers began to land, a strange sensation rippled through Lynx's mind. He had been in combat for years, but the tension in the air felt different this time. His team stood still, eyes scanning the horizon. The silence after the EMP burst was now replaced by the sound of distant explosions and the roar of alien weapons. Suddenly, Lynx's communicator buzzed with an urgent message. The Earth's central defense systems had been breached. The Vornax Apex had infiltrated the mainframe, cutting off all communication with Earth's remaining satellites. A direct attack was inevitable. But Lynx's team wasn't ready to give up. They had one thing the Vornax Apex didn't: human ingenuity. As the first explosion went off near a city center, humans responded in the only way they knew how, by fighting back with everything they had. Lynx and his team made their way toward the epicenter of the invasion. They knew the odds were against them, but they had no choice but to fight. Their mission was simple: slow down the Vornax Apex long enough for the global forces to mount a counterattack. As the Vornax Apex forces advanced, it became clear that the battle would not be won through sheer power alone. Humans had to outsmart their enemies. Lynx's team used advanced cloaking technology, weapons designed to take down even the toughest opponents, and tactics honed from years of warfare. They had no time to be afraid, they had no time to think about the odds. Each strike was calculated, each move a part of a larger plan to buy time for humanity's true weapons to come online. The team moved quickly, leaving destruction in their wake. But every victory came at a cost. The Vornax Apex were relentless, and for every Vornax they took down, two more seemed to take their place. Then, amidst the chaos, something unexpected happened. The Vornax Apex began to falter. Their communication was disrupted. For the first time, the Vornax were thrown off balance. It wasn't just human weapons that had given them pause, it was human resilience. They didn't give up. They didn't run. Humans were not invincible, but their ability to adapt, to improvise, and to never stop fighting made them a force that the Vornax Apex had never expected. In the face of overwhelming odds, Earth's military, led by Colonel Lynx, was starting to turn the tide. And so, as the Vornax Apex descended further into Earth's atmosphere, they were about to learn the one thing that no alien race had ever dared to believe: humanity was not a species that could be wiped out. It would be a long, bloody battle, but the fight for Earth had only just begun. The first strike from the Vornax Apex was swift and unforgiving. Their fleet, massive and overwhelming, descended on Earth's cities with unrelenting force. Cities that had once been the heart of human progress, New York, Tokyo, London, Paris, were reduced to rubble in a matter of hours. Sky-high towers crumbled, and explosions echoed through the streets. Every major city was either destroyed or left in flames. The Vornax Apex aimed to crush Earth's morale and send a message: resistance was futile. But what the Vornax didn't count on was the spirit of humanity. As their ships rained destruction from the sky, something stirred deep within Earth's defenders. The first wave of Vornax Apex soldiers assumed they would face disorganized panic. They expected to find a planet broken, scared, and easy to dominate. They were wrong. Despite the odds, the human resistance held firm. Colonel Lynx and his team, stationed on the front lines, quickly realized that the Vornax Apex were not invincible. Sure, they were technologically advanced and physically superior, but they were far from perfect. Their overconfidence became their weakness. For all their might, they lacked one thing humanity had mastered for centuries: strategy and adaptation. Lynx had already seen the devastation the Vornax caused. Watching the destruction from a makeshift command post, he could feel the weight of the situation. The enemy's power was undeniable, but there was one thing Lynx knew: humans were survivors. And survival wasn't about brute force. It was about outsmarting your opponent. The Vornax Apex were formidable. Their ships were made of metal harder than anything humans had encountered, and their weaponry was beyond advanced. But Lynx saw something more. When they shot down one of the Vornax Apex fighter ships, he realized that their technology, while lethal, wasn't infallible. The Vornax had relied too heavily on their technological superiority, leaving them vulnerable to the one thing they hadn't expected: the will of the human spirit. Get ready, Lynx barked to his team as they prepared for their next move. He had a plan, a risky one, but one that just might work. His team had always been good at improvising, and in this situation, improvisation was their only option. As they watched the wreckage of the Vornax fighter burning in the sky, Lynx's team quickly began gathering data from their own ship scanners. "They're not as perfect as they think," Lynx muttered, as he studied the broken pieces of the Vornax ship. "There's a weakness in their shields. It's small, but it's there." Using the advanced cloaking devices they had developed, Lynx's team infiltrated Vornax forces with stealth and precision. The Vornax soldiers, though intelligent and strong, weren't prepared for guerrilla tactics, especially not tactics from a species they had underestimated. Lynx and his team moved silently, taking down smaller groups of Vornax soldiers, slowly but surely causing havoc behind enemy lines. But the Vornax apex weren't easily fooled. They quickly adapted to the humans' guerrilla tactics. They began setting up countermeasures, jamming communications, and deploying search drones to flush out the human resistance. The Vornax had not only technology but also the intellect to match their strength. It was a battle of wits now, and Lynx knew it was just as dangerous as facing their firepower. Despite the setbacks, Lynx's team pushed forward with one goal: sabotage. They didn't have the numbers to stand up to the Vornax head-to-head, so they would strike at the heart of their operation: power sources, supply lines, and communications. They struck where the Vornax least expected. The humans' small victories weren't without cost. Bonner, one of the most dedicated soldiers on the team, was lost in one of their attacks. He had been one of the first to volunteer for the mission. He believed in their cause and, more than anything, he believed in humanity's ability to fight back. During a high-risk sabotage mission at a Vornax power plant, Bonner and a few others were trapped. They fought bravely to the end, using their last moments to set explosives that would delay the Vornax forces. Lynx stood over Bonner's fallen body, feeling the sting of loss. Bonner had been more than just a soldier. He had been a brother, a friend. But he also understood something that the Vornax couldn't: the will to fight, to never surrender, even in the face of death. Bonner's sacrifice wasn't just the loss of one man, it was a symbol of what humanity stood for. It was a reminder that no matter how dire the situation, no matter how powerful the enemy, humans would never give up. The loss of Bonner weighed heavily on Lynx, but it also served as a spark for his team. The death of one soldier meant nothing to the Vornax apex, but to Lynx and his team, it meant everything. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for each other, for their fallen comrades, and for the future of their world. As the days wore on, the humans' guerrilla tactics and sabotage operations began to show results. The Vornax apex started to lose control of the battlefield. They had expected Earth to crumble under their power, but instead, they were facing a fight they weren't prepared for, a fight that relied on wit, strategy, and the resilience of the human spirit. Colonel Lynx stood before his team, looking over the scattered remnants of their recent operation. "We've made them bleed," he said, his voice steady despite the losses. "But this is just the beginning. We're not fighting just for today. We're fighting for tomorrow. For our families. For Earth." The team nodded, their faces hardened but resolute. They had lost comrades, but they had gained something far more important: hope. As long as there were humans willing to fight, there was hope. Lynx knew the Vornax apex were still a formidable force, but they were no longer invincible. Humans were learning. Humans were adapting. And above all, humans were fighting back. The battle for Earth had only just begun, but the resistance was stronger than ever. And with each passing day, the Vornax apex would learn that humanity wasn't just a species to be conquered, it was a species that could turn the tide of war, one battle at a time. The Vornax apex had been wreaking havoc on Earth for weeks, their overwhelming power threatening to break the human spirit. Cities had been destroyed, countless lives lost, and yet, humans refused to give up. Colonel Lynx and his team had struck the enemy hard, but they knew the battle was far from over. With every attack, they learned more about their invaders, about the Vornax, and about the very thing that made them so dangerous, their hive mind. Humanity had its own secret weapon, one that the Vornax apex never saw coming. Advanced quantum computing and AI research, breakthroughs that humans had spent years developing, were about to become the key to turning the tide of war. Earth's best scientists, now working alongside Lynx's team, had managed to hack into the Vornax military network. They had discovered something horrifying, something that the Vornax relied on for everything, the hive mind. The Vornax apex were not a collection of individual beings. They were one unified force, connected through a central nervous system, a collective consciousness, or hive mind, that controlled everything from their movements to their decisions. The hive mind was their strength, the reason why they were so deadly and nearly impossible to defeat. It allowed them to function as a single, organized force, making them seem invincible. But now, Lynx and his team had a plan. They had a chance to strike at the heart of the Vornax apex army. If they could disrupt the hive mind, they could break the Vornax's unity, causing their forces to crumble into chaos. The plan was simple in theory but incredibly risky. The hive mind was located deep within the Vornax apex mothership, a heavily guarded fortress in space, surrounded by an impenetrable defense system. Destroying it would not only disrupt the Vornax apex's communications and control, but it would cause a mental breakdown among their soldiers. Without the hive mind, the Vornax would be like a headless beast, powerful but directionless. Lynx gathered his team for the final mission briefing. The atmosphere in the room was tense but determined. Everyone knew this was their last chance to stop the Vornax and save humanity. The stakes had never been higher. They had lost good men and women already, but this mission was their only hope for victory. "We have the chance to strike at the heart of the Vornax forces," Lynx said, his voice steady despite the pressure. "If we can take down the hive mind, the Vornax will lose all coordination. They'll be confused, disoriented, and ripe for a counterattack. This is our moment." The team nodded, understanding the importance of the mission. They were going to take a huge risk, but they had no choice. The Vornax apex had underestimated humanity, and Lynx was determined to make them pay for it. The plan was set. Lynx's team would use their advanced cloaking devices to infiltrate the Vornax apex mothership. They would slip past enemy patrols, avoiding detection long enough to plant a device that would disrupt the hive mind. But getting to the mothership wasn't the hardest part. The real challenge lay inside. As Lynx's team made their way to the enemy mothership, they encountered heavy resistance. The Vornax apex were not stupid. They had anticipated that humanity might eventually try to strike at the heart of their operations, and they had fortified the mothership's defenses accordingly. Every step forward was a battle in itself. The team moved silently, cloaked in their high-tech camouflage, slipping past guards and security systems. But despite their stealth, they were not invisible. The Vornax apex had advanced detection systems that could pick up even the slightest anomaly in their environment. As they neared the heart of the mothership, Lynx could feel the pressure mounting. Every moment brought them closer to danger, and they couldn't afford to make a single mistake. Then, the alarms went off. The Vornax apex had detected them. Lynx's heart raced as he barked orders to his team. "Move! Now!" In an instant, all hell broke loose. The cloaking devices were no longer effective against the enemy's advanced scanners. The team had been exposed. The Vornax soldiers, enhanced with superior technology and weapons, stormed toward them. They were ready for a fight, and they didn't plan on letting these humans reach the hive mind without a fight. The first wave of Vornax soldiers was fast and ruthless. They charged with precision, their weapons blazing. Lynx and his team were prepared, but the odds were stacked against them. The Vornax soldiers were armed with plasma rifles that could melt through steel, and their bodies were enhanced with cybernetic implants, making them faster and stronger than anything humans had ever encountered. Lynx ducked behind cover, narrowly avoiding a blast that would have torn him apart. He signaled for his team to return fire. "Take them down," he shouted. The sound of gunfire filled the air as Lynx's team fought back, using everything they had to hold off the enemy. Each soldier was trained for close combat, and even though they were outmatched, they fought with everything in them. Lynx saw his team working as one, moving in perfect coordination, despite the chaos surrounding them. It was a dance of life and death, and the humans were determined to survive. But the Vornax soldiers were relentless. With every soldier they took down, 2 more appeared. It was clear they were being overwhelmed. Lynx gritted his teeth and pressed on. They couldn't afford to fail now. Then, just as hope seemed to fade, they made it to the hive mind's core. The device that controlled the entire Vornax army was housed in a massive chamber, surrounded by layers of energy shields. This was it. The moment they had all been waiting for. Lynx's heart pounded as he reached into his bag and pulled out the EMP device they had spent weeks developing. This was their only chance to disrupt the hive mind. One shot, one chance. If they failed, it would all be over. He placed the device in the center of the room, setting the timer. Then, they moved quickly, fighting their way out of the chamber as the Vornax soldiers closed in around them. The seconds felt like hours. Finally, the device activated, sending out a massive electromagnetic pulse that fried the hive mind circuits. The results were immediate. Across the mothership, the Vornax Apex soldiers froze. Their movements became erratic, and their communication systems went silent. Without the hive mind's control, the Vornax army was in chaos. Lynx and his team barely made it out of the mothership alive, their mission successful, but at a great cost. As they watched the mothership, now in disarray, drifting in the distance, Lynx couldn't help but feel a sense of victory. The Vornax Apex had been forced into disarray. They had broken their unity, and without that connection, they were nothing. But Lynx knew this wasn't over yet. The Vornax Apex were a dangerous enemy, and this victory was just the beginning. The war for Earth was far from finished. The fight for humanity's survival had only just begun. The battle inside the Vornax Apex mothership had reached its peak. The walls, once sleek and intimidating, now felt like a tomb, echoing with the sound of boots hitting metal floors and distant explosions. The air was thick with the smell of burned metal and smoke. Every door, every corner was a potential death trap, a reminder of the high stakes that had led them here. The Vornax Apex had underestimated humanity, but now, after months of brutal resistance, they were about to find out just how dangerous humans could be. Colonel Lynx and his team, who had once been the underdogs in this war, had become the apex predators of this fight. No longer were they hiding, running, or waiting to be wiped out. They had turned the tide. They had discovered the weakness, and now they were ready to take full advantage of it. The Vornax Apex had superior technology, weapons, and defenses, but Lynx's team had something they didn't. They had resolve. They had strategy. And most importantly, they had each other. The humans were not only fighting for survival now, they were fighting for victory, for the chance to free Earth from the grip of an enemy that had thought it could crush them in an instant. The once invincible Vornax Apex army was starting to falter. The hive mind, the core of their unity, had been shattered by Lynx's team. Their soldiers, once organized and deadly, were now chaotic, disoriented, and vulnerable. Communication between them had broken down. No longer could the Vornax coordinate their attacks with precision. It was every Vornax for itself. But even with this advantage, the battle was far from over. The Vornax forces were still a terrifying threat. Their advanced technology gave them an edge in combat, and their fighters were some of the deadliest beings in the galaxy. Lynx and his team knew that they had to act quickly before the Vornax adapted and regained control. "Stay sharp, everyone," Lynx said, his voice cold but determined. "We have one shot at this. We have to take the fight to them, now." With the hive mind disrupted, Lynx's team began to move through the mothership with renewed purpose. Their objective was clear. Destroy the heart of the Vornax forces and make sure the enemy could never recover. As they advanced, the tension in the air was palpable. Each step felt like a countdown to something even bigger, a final confrontation that would determine the fate of humanity. The Vornax soldiers, now fractured and panicked, made desperate attempts to regroup. But Lynx's team had learned how to fight their advanced enemies. They had adapted their tactics to the Vornax's weaknesses. The humans were using guerrilla tactics, hitting hard and fast, striking at weak points, and disappearing into the shadows before the enemy could respond. They weren't just fighting, they were hunting. The humans had learned to anticipate the Vornax's movements, using their own tactics against them. Each battle became a chess match, with Lynx's team always one move ahead. They used the Vornax's strength against them, causing confusion and chaos wherever they went. The once organized ranks of the Vornax began to crumble under the pressure. But the Vornax apex weren't giving up so easily. Out of nowhere, a roar echoed through the mothership. A Vornax warlord, towering over 6 meters tall and covered in thick, armored plating, appeared in front of them. The warlord wielded a massive weapon, a plasma cannon that could vaporize entire squads in seconds. His eyes burned with hatred as he charged at the humans, his every movement an embodiment of the Vornax's unstoppable power. Lynx's team didn't hesitate. They had come this far, and they weren't going to be intimidated by a single warlord. They had faced worse. The warlord's plasma cannon fired, but the humans were already moving. They dodged, ducked, and retaliated with pinpoint accuracy, using their superior speed and coordination to outmaneuver the warlord. One of Lynx's soldiers, Sergeant Weller, fired a missile at the warlord's chest, hitting him square in the armor. The explosion sent the warlord reeling, but he wasn't defeated yet. He roared in fury and charged again, determined to crush the humans once and for all. Lynx's team was relentless. They didn't back down. They kept attacking, wearing the warlord down until, finally, they managed to disable his weapon systems. With a final coordinated effort, they took him down, sending the warlord crashing to the floor in defeat. The battle wasn't over yet. Lynx's team had to keep moving, stay on the offensive. They couldn't let up now. As they continued deeper into the mothership, they encountered more resistance, Vornax fighters, soldiers, and war machines, but the humans were no longer playing defense. They were striking back with everything they had. Lynx's heart raced as they made their way toward the central command room, the final objective. They were so close now. Every member of his team knew that this was their last chance to take down the Vornax once and for all. There was no turning back. As they approached the central command room, the final Vornax defense systems came online. The door was reinforced with energy shields, and heavy firepower covered every entrance. The humans couldn't just walk in, they had to breach the defenses first. The team set up explosives around the door, and with a single command, they detonated them. The explosion rocked the mothership, and the door was blown wide open. Inside, the Vornax commanders were waiting. They had prepared for this final assault, and they weren't going to go down without a fight. The humans charged in, guns blazing, engaging in the most intense battle of the war. The Vornax commanders were armed with high-tech weapons and shield generators, but the humans were relentless. They had fought this hard for too long to give up now. The fight inside the command room was brutal. It was a clash of wills, human determination against Vornax might. The humans pushed forward, each soldier fighting for something bigger than themselves. They fought for their families, for their world, for the future. And with every Vornax soldier they took down, they knew they were one step closer to victory. In the end, it was Lynx who delivered the final blow. He reached the control center, where the last of the Vornax commanders was attempting to reactivate the hive mind. With a single shot, Lynx destroyed the central core, finally severing the Vornax's ability to control their forces. The room fell silent. The battle was over. The Vornax Apex were defeated. Lynx stood among his team, their faces covered in sweat and blood, but their spirits unbroken. They had done it. Against all odds, they had defeated the seemingly unstoppable Vornax Empire. Humanity had won. But this victory came at a heavy price. Many soldiers, like Sergeant Weller and Bonner, had given their lives for this moment. Their sacrifices would never be forgotten. Lynx looked at his team, their faces tired but filled with pride. They had accomplished the impossible. The war wasn't over for Earth, but this battle had been a turning point. The Vornax Apex had underestimated humanity, but now they knew better. The humans had proven that even against the most advanced alien species in the galaxy, they could rise up and fight back. As the Vornax mothership drifted in space, the humans knew that they had earned their place as the apex predators of the galaxy. The final confrontation was imminent. The air on the Vornax Apex mothership was thick with tension as Colonel Lynx prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of humanity. He knew that this was the moment he had trained for, the moment that would either bring victory or doom. Across from him stood the Vornax Apex's leader, Drakkar, a being unlike any other. A hybrid of alien technology and brutal strength, Drakkar was a force of nature, the apex predator of his race. He had led his people with a cold, ruthless efficiency, and his belief in the superiority of the Vornax was absolute. But Lynx had something that Drakkar didn't understand. Human willpower, the ability to adapt, to fight with everything they had, even when the odds were impossible. Lynx had watched his comrades fall, had seen his world burning, but he had never given up. And now, standing before him, was the final challenge. This was not just a battle for survival, it was a battle for everything humanity had left. The Vornax forces had fallen apart after the destruction of the hive mind, but Drakkar had remained a singular threat, isolated and determined to exact his revenge. He had watched the humans destroy his armies, seen them fight with ferocity, and now he stood before Lynx, convinced that no human could ever defeat him. "You think you can beat me?" Drakkar's voice echoed through the chamber, a deep, resonant sound that sent chills down Lynx's spine. "You are nothing but fragile flesh and bone. Your so-called resistance is nothing more than a blip in the history of the galaxy. No human has ever stood on my level." Lynx's grip tightened around his weapon as he met Drakkar's cold, alien eyes. The taunts didn't matter. Lynx wasn't here to talk. He was here to finish what he started. "I'm not here to prove your theories wrong," Lynx said, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "I'm here to make sure your kind never threatens Earth again." The two warriors circled each other, the tension in the air almost unbearable. Lynx was fast, trained in the art of close-quarters combat, and his mind was sharp from years of war. But Drakkar was powerful, his strength and advanced alien technology gave him an edge that Lynx would have to outsmart, not overpower. Without warning, Drakkar lunged forward, his massive arm swinging toward Lynx. The blow was fast and brutal, but Lynx was faster. He ducked, narrowly avoiding the attack, and countered with a quick strike to Drakkar's side. The alien leader grunted, the blow doing little to slow him down. Drakkar spun around, his claws extending from his gauntlets, ready to tear through Lynx's armor. Lynx was on the defensive, but he didn't panic. He moved with precision, using his agility to dodge Drakkar's attacks. The two warriors clashed in a blur of movement, each strike and counterstrike echoing in the chamber. Sparks flew as weapons collided, and the sound of metal scraping against metal filled the air. Drakkar's technology was unlike anything Lynx had faced before. His gauntlets could generate powerful energy pulses, and his exoskeleton enhanced his strength to inhuman levels. Each punch sent shockwaves through the room, and Lynx could feel the pressure building with every exchange. But Lynx was determined. He knew that Drakkar might be stronger, but he was not invincible. As the battle raged on, Lynx's mind raced. He had trained for this moment, and he knew that Drakkar's strength was his biggest advantage. But there was a weakness, a gap in Drakkar's defense that Lynx had spotted early on. The Vornax Apex leader relied too much on his raw power and his technology, and that reliance made him predictable. Lynx took a deep breath, focusing on the rhythm of the battle. The next time Drakkar swung, Lynx was ready. He dodged the blow and spun behind the alien leader, using his own momentum against him. With a quick, calculated strike, Lynx disabled Drakkar's energy gauntlets, rendering his attacks less powerful. For a moment, there was silence. Drakkar stood there, his arms now useless, the energy draining from his gauntlets. He turned slowly to face Lynx, fury burning in his eyes. His voice was filled with contempt. "You think you've won? You can't defeat me. I am the leader of the Vornax Apex. You are nothing." Lynx stood his ground, his breathing heavy but controlled. "I'm not fighting you because I'm better. I'm fighting you because I'm fighting for Earth. And that's something you'll never understand." With those words, Lynx launched himself at Drakkar, who was now enraged and desperate. The battle became even more ferocious. Drakkar used his brute strength, trying to overwhelm Lynx with powerful, wild attacks. But Lynx was focused. He was determined to avenge the fallen soldiers, to honor their sacrifices, and to show Drakkar that humanity was not something to be taken lightly. Lynx's strikes were precise, aimed at the weak points in Drakkar's armor. The fight had become a battle of endurance. Drakkar's strength was impressive, but his rage was blinding him. Lynx, on the other hand, was calm, calculating every move, knowing that the right strike would bring the battle to an end. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lynx saw the opening he had been waiting for. As Drakkar swung for one final blow, Lynx sidestepped and used the alien's own momentum against him. He lunged forward, his weapon piercing through the weakened armor around Drakkar's chest. The blow was devastating. Drakkar staggered, his eyes widening in shock, before he fell to his knees, defeated. For a moment, the room was silent. Lynx stood over Drakkar, panting heavily. His heart was racing, and his body ached from the brutal fight, but there was a sense of triumph in his chest. He had done it. He had defeated the seemingly invincible Vornax leader. Drakkar's eyes were filled with disbelief as he looked up at Lynx. You're nothing. This war will never end. The Vornax will return." Lynx knelt beside him, his voice low but resolute. "Not if I can help it." With that, Lynx stood, his hands trembling slightly as he looked down at Drakkar. The battle was over. The war was over. Humanity had won. But it had come at a cost. The sacrifice of soldiers like Bonner and Weller weighed heavily on Lynx's heart. They had given everything to ensure that Earth would survive, and their loss would never be forgotten. This victory was not just for Lynx, it was for them, for all of humanity, and for the future that they had fought to protect. Lynx looked out at the destroyed Vornax mothership, the symbol of the Vornax Apex's defeat. Humanity had faced the greatest threat it had ever known, and it had triumphed. The Vornax had underestimated humanity, but now they would understand that Earth was not a planet to be conquered. It was a world that would rise, fight, and win. Lynx's hand clenched into a fist, and as he gazed into the vastness of space, he knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity, against all odds, would never back down. The aftermath of the battle left Earth forever changed. Lynx and his team stood victorious, but the weight of their success was heavy. The Vornax Apex, once thought to be unbeatable, had been overthrown. The elite warriors, the once feared apex predators, lay in ruin, their advanced technology shattered. Humanity had faced the greatest threat in its history and emerged not just alive, but triumphant. But the victory came at a cost, and the world would never be the same again. Lynx's heart still ached for his fallen comrades. Soldiers like Bonner, Weller, and countless others had given their lives so that humanity could survive. Their names were etched in Lynx's mind as symbols of sacrifice. They were the reason Earth had won, because of their courage, their unyielding spirit, and their belief in something greater than themselves. As Lynx gazed out at the burning wreckage of the Vornax mothership, he could still hear the echoes of their sacrifices. They would never be forgotten. But in the midst of the pain, there was a sense of hope. The Vornax apex had underestimated humanity, and now the galaxy would see just what Earth was capable of. The victory over the apex predators wasn't just a military triumph, it was a victory for human ingenuity, for resilience, and for the hearts of those who refused to surrender. As Earth celebrated its hard-won peace, the world began to change. Nations that had once been divided came together in the face of a common threat, united by the knowledge that they had all fought side by side for their survival. It was a time of rebuilding, of healing, but also of unprecedented growth. The world was now a beacon of strength, a symbol of the power that could come from unity and courage. For the first time in centuries, Earth stood on equal footing with the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The Vornax had been an unstoppable force, until humanity had shown them otherwise. The Galactic Federation, once so terrified of the Vornax apex, had witnessed Earth's strength firsthand. No longer was Earth seen as a primitive, isolated planet. No longer were humans viewed as weak, fragile creatures. The Federation saw Earth as a force to be reckoned with, and they knew that humanity had earned its place among the stars. The leaders of the Galactic Federation, once hesitant and wary of Earth's potential, now extended an olive branch. They sent emissaries to Earth, offering alliances, technology exchanges, and resources. They had no choice but to respect humanity. Lynx had never imagined this outcome. In the past, Earth had been a target, a world to be conquered. Now, it was a world that commanded respect. The message from the Federation was clear: Earth had earned its place in the galactic community. But for Lynx it was more than just a diplomatic gesture. It was a recognition of what humans were capable of, a validation of everything they had fought for. It was a chance for humanity to grow, to explore, and to learn from the galaxy's many wonders. It was an opportunity to rise above their past struggles and become something greater. But as the celebrations began and Earth's new status in the galaxy was solidified, Lynx couldn't forget the faces of his fallen soldiers. The victory was theirs as much as it was his, and he made sure that their stories were told. Their names would be immortalized, not just as warriors, but as heroes, those who had fought to the end and secured the future of humanity. Their sacrifice would never be forgotten, and their legacy would continue to inspire generations to come. As the celebrations turned into reflections, Earth's leaders gathered to discuss their next steps. They knew that this victory was just the beginning. The Vornax apex had been defeated, but the galaxy was vast, filled with countless other civilizations. The power dynamics of the universe had shifted, and humanity was now a player on the galactic stage. It was a time for Earth to learn, to grow, and to prepare for whatever challenges lay ahead. But despite the challenges that were sure to come, Lynx knew one thing for certain. Humanity would never be caught off guard again. The battle against the Vornax had taught them valuable lessons, lessons that would shape their future. The people of Earth were no longer just survivors. They were now warriors, explorers, and innovators. They had faced the darkness of space and had come out stronger. In the aftermath, Lynx stood before a vast assembly of world leaders, military commanders, and diplomats. His heart was still heavy with loss, but there was pride in his eyes. His team had done the impossible. They had pushed back against the Vornax apex, and now Earth stood as a beacon of strength in the galaxy. The message he had for the gathered crowd was simple but powerful. We've faced the greatest threat the universe has ever known. And we've won. But this victory is not just for us, it's for everyone who believed in the impossible. We are no longer just humans. We are a force to be reckoned with. The Vornax apex thought they could crush us. They were wrong. We will rise again, and we will defend our future. We will show the galaxy that humanity is not a species to be taken lightly. His words echoed through the room, and the assembled leaders and diplomats stood in stunned silence. Lynx's words were not just a declaration, they were a challenge, a promise to the galaxy that humanity would not be cowed by any threat, no matter how powerful. The Vornax had been the first to underestimate humanity. But they would not be the last. In the weeks that followed, Earth's new role in the galaxy became clearer. The Galactic Federation, once hesitant, now sought humanity's expertise in technology and strategy. Earth's quantum computing and AI systems, once a well-kept secret, were now considered among the best in the galaxy. Earth's knowledge of warfare and resilience became something that other civilizations sought to understand. Lynx, now seen as a hero, stood at the forefront of these efforts, guiding Earth's future. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy. But humanity had proven something that day. They had proven that they were more than capable of rising to any challenge. The Vornax apex had been a test, and humanity had passed it with flying colors. As Lynx stood at the edge of the world, gazing up at the stars, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The journey had been long, the cost had been high, but humanity had done it. They had taken their place among the stars, not as victims, not as underdogs, but as equals. The world was changing, and humanity was ready for whatever came next. Lynx's final message to the galaxy was simple, yet powerful: apex predators. We are humans. And now, we are the new predators of the galaxy.